This is the Almost Daily ZenCast. Hello, and Namaste. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. I am your humble host, the Incorrigible Mr Zeppo. Let's get started. Hello and Namaste. Thank you for tuning in. Today, a prompt. One might see it as a survey, a completely unscientific survey, wherein I ask you, dear listener, to tell me what the 3 biggest questions about life, the universe, anything inside it, you've contended with in your life. Now, I'm not claiming to know everything or to know all the answers. And I don't know how I'll respond to submissions. I do know that I will retain my right to not read submissions if I don't see any value in sharing them. I also assure you, friends, that all submissions will be anonymized and I will not reveal any personal information about yourself. I'm just interested in the 3 biggest questions. Not only do I want to read the individual submissions that you might submit, your personal 3 biggest questions, I'll look at them, read them on the future episode of the show, and talk about my thoughts, what I do, what I don't know, and hopefully, over time, how any given set of individual questions connect to other questions. Anything that I do feel confident about, I will give you a straight answer. Anything that I'm like, dude, I really don't know, I will tell you, dude, I really don't know. And anything that's like silly or absurd might get poked a little fun at, and anything that's downright hate speech or some sort of instigation to conflict, I may choose to not include in this little project. But I do hope to welcome many submissions. There's at least 12 of you listening. Somewhere in the mid-teens, I think, 12, 15, maybe 20. So if I get 5 submissions, that'd make for a really cool episode. So, please, send your submissions. Actually, and I hate to do this to you, because I've been debating in my head for the whole last, however long it took to get ready to jump on and do this hopefully short episode that should just be, boom, here's the thing. Let's come back to it in a few weeks and see how many submissions are. But I've been debating in my head, should I tell them to send me an email to a specific email address? Should I tell everybody to tweet it at me? I don't really use Twitter that much, although I guess I could make the effort. Should I make it a thing that happens on Instagram? Should I send everybody to my Facebook page? Or should I send everybody to the main Sprecher.com website? And I think, just to sort of like honor the platform as the actual platform that I chose and continue to choose, by the way. This is an honest, genuine, personal, uninfluenced endorsement of Sprecher.com. I wrote a good review. You can look it up. It's on the iPad app store. And I think I'll try to find a way to propagate the review on the other platforms where I could be posting a review about it. I genuinely feel it's a pretty solid and awesome app for anybody at any level from total amateur hobbyists like myself to experienced slick professional who's done it with other tools before. Check it out. It's awesome, and its services are reliable and nice. And I dig it. It's not too expensive, although they did recently do a little price hike. But the things they've rolled out and what I hope to see as a future trend of improvements, I think may have been worth the extra bit of money. But I digress. Oh, Sprecher, if you're listening, the one thing I'd love, the one wish list item I'd love, and I put this in my review on the App Store. And as I say that, I realized that I've only recently, it occurred to me recently, in between then, when I wrote that review and now, that I actually have a second wish list item. So, my two only wish list items, if Sprecher happens to be checking out my podcast, and or the review about the Sprecher platform. One, I would love to be able to present to the listeners the podcast episodes in sorted by the variable defined as total number of plays and downloads combined for each episode, if that makes sense. In other words, you know how on the episodes tab of the podcaster's profile, or whoever the owner of the profile is, you can see all of their tracks at sprecher.com/user/Mr Zeppo. You can see all of my episodes, or segments, as I like to call them. Now, deep in my dashboard settings, I can reorganize the order of the show at sprecher.com and out into the RSS feed, I believe, in the basic, and which is actually a pretty awesome way. It's like, is it chronological or is it newest one first? So like your oldest episode first, and you got to start there and work your way down the list of episodes to get to the newest one. And I had my show set up like that for a while. And then I said, fuck it, I'm going to put newest one first. So I flipped it. And then I was left with like a deep longing, a curiosity. Like, what other fun way could we present the show, any show, whatever, my show in particular, for my own weird purposes, according to another variable that goes in a different axis, different than, a basic graph, you've got the up-down axis and the left-right axis, right? It's usually number being measured and time, the two traditional things. But here I'm comparing, if chronological order / newest to oldest order can be considered one axis of option, I want a different axes, right? Like, I want to be able to order it according to number of plays, either in ascending order or descending order, just for shits and giggles. So that, because I like to do fun things to shake things up. For example, a long-promised review, reboot, re-edit, remix, and representation of all existing episodes, hopefully, knock on wood, ambitious thought, right? It's going to be kicked off this summer after many attempts and sort of experimental, how would I do this if I was really going to get serious about doing it? And sort of false starts and not really having enough time to do it. I'm committed this summer. I've set aside time. I haven't picked up alternate work gigs like I might or could have. And I've padded my, nest egg in order to get through the summer and focus completely and entirely on this and some other creative projects that, of course, sit in a slightly different dimension. But I digress. Yeah, I'd love to, for the fun curiosity's sake of it, because all my episodes are sort of me going off on themes, and all the themes interconnect. I'd love to be able to be like, I wonder what the most listened to / downloaded episode or segment is. And I mean, not just on Sprecher, and I'm not clear on this, Sprecher. Do you guys aggregate everything from all the outlets that you distribute to, or are the numbers on Sprecher just the numbers on Sprecher? I think I've asked that in an episode before. If anybody out there listening knows, please, please, please let me know. Those are my 3 big questions about Sprecher regarding this weird thing that I have. And the 2 wishlist items. What was the second? The first was the reordering. Oh, the second wish list item, and I mean this honestly and sincerely, and it's sort of like borrowed from the gaming, the MMO gaming subscription world, the culture of MMO games that have subscriptions. The really savvy ones, they offer you a monthly version, and then they offer you like pay for the whole year in advance with a nice little discount version of your automatic billing. I would love to be able to pay for the whole year in advance for my Sprecher account, just because it's a simpler and easier way to like manage that money. I live paycheck to paycheck basically, and I live, I do seasonal work. It's all sort of been reduced to freelancing anyways. Basically, the whole world's being reduced to freelancing. But I digress. I'm not bitching and moaning. I love what I do. I'm very grateful, full of gratitude for the theater world, and the way I get to work in it. And I aspire to transition my modality of work so that I'm in a different position than I'm in now. But I digress. That's not the point. For my interests and for my basically sort of, I'm not a month-to-month money juggler. I'd really love to just sort out my subscription expenses during the thick of the busiest time of my theater season, so I can just pay them all and be boom, during the depth of summer, which is the winter in the Cricket and the Ant story, it's my winter, when either I couldn't get work because the market's tight, or I chose not to get work like this summer and other summers before, when I feel like I really want to focus on some art or some writing or some other project. I don't have to worry about that subscription fee waiting to ping out every month. I've already paid for the whole fucking year, right? Please and thank you. All right, cool. I'm going to go and edit that review and include that, thanks to the brainstorm I just had now. But I digress. All of that silliness aside, Om Shanti Metta Shanti Om Namaste. Thank you very much, Sprecher, for what you guys have provided. Pretty awesome platform. I mean that genuinely and sincerely. It has made this ridiculous idea that I, honestly, and here's a personal weird bucket list nostalgia memory moment for me. Join me in a brief stroll down memory lane before I get back to the point of this episode. Literally, and if anybody listening happens to actually know, I have a real life brother, a sibling. If anybody knows him, don't go looking him up. Leave him alone. I'm not trying to call him out. I adore him. We've had our ups and downs. But when we were kids, and this is a fond memory, and all I brought my brother up for was that he can vouch for this, that I'm not making this up just for the sucking up to the Sprecher platform, because I'm not. I dig it, and I don't give a fuck what they think of me. They're taking my money, so I can get to say what I want, right? Freedom of speech. That's the real freedom that they want to keep, right? So I digress. My brother can vouch for the following fact, that as kids, although it didn't really work out, we thought it would be awesome to be radio DJ co-hosts for a hot second. I was a jerk, and I apologize to my brother should he ever get around to listening to this. I fucked all of our kid collaborations up because I was going through an ego phase and failing those ego trap tests, clearly. And I was, a crazy person. I'm either clinically insane or I'm troubled or burdened with sort of, weird spiritual, esoteric, hippie new age woo-woo stuff. But that's a whole nother episode, right? We would sit in front of our awesome hi-fi stereophonic turntable with built-in double cassette tape deck recording center where you could make the awesomest mixtapes. And mind you, I was too young to be in courtship mode and make the awesomest mixtapes at the time of this current flashback memory that I'm sharing with you. And then later on in life, to teleport forward for a hot minute to a different chapter, and share with you the fun irony. By the time I got around to that point in time where making hot, fun, cool, romantic, flirty mixtapes for somebody would be in and stuff, I don't think I had that awesome, the family that I grew up in, didn't have that awesome hi-fi, super sexy, 70s, high-end, late 70s, early 80s, high-end, high-fidelity, I think it was made in Japan. I don't know for sure. I don't remember what it was called. But it was just like, for those of you who are now, currently, you millennials who love vinyl, trust me, I get it. I haven't owned vinyl since, like, basically we must have let it go or changed it up in like junior high. And then we couldn't quite do what we wanted to do because there was no longer like an audio mic jack input in the next thing that we got. And there was like a great audio jack microphone input with like a really simple but awesome, not a mixing board, but a little fucking, what do you call it when you can like adjust those, the little thingies, and it's got to do with different frequencies in the mid-range and the high end and the low end, the amp variables, whatever, something. This coming from a guy who took sound design class. Somewhere in the universe, there's a version of my sound design teacher from school that for some reason is listening to this podcast going, oh God, because I can't remember the fundamental terminology. I apologize. It's been 100 years. But I digress. This system was great, right? And trust me, I know, and I look forward to the day when I can get myself something like it again. I don't know if I'd buy vintage, but that's a whole nother question. The sound quality, right? You drop the needle on a fucking record, on a great system that's been wired up correctly by someone who understands how to wire audio systems. Oh, that's a thing. That's a thing that digital media just cannot provide. And it's great. It's great that there's a little fun subculture of preserving that and keeping it going and people pressing new vinyl. Huzzah. Okay, I digress. Blah, blah, blah. That was crazy. So that's why I love doing what I do, and why finally, after years of going, oh, that was always sort of something I aspired to and fantasized about, and, you know, as a little kid, I'd be like, wouldn't it be great to be a radio DJ and talk about funny things and tell people what the news is, and then boom, drop the needle on this record and play this hot song because it's the hottest song. I can't play records because this isn't the radio and I don't have any licensing agreements, etc., etc. And I think I can barely get away with playing meditation tracks on occasion because they're on a meditation app and I'm doing this sort of like influencer, get more people to go get that app sort of maneuver, which I think protects my ass a little bit. If it doesn't, Inside Timer, I will gladly stop. Inside Timer, I respect you and all the artists / teachers you represent. Everybody go check that shit out. It's an honest endorsement. It's a great thing. If you got that and a great Bluetooth speaker or a great pair of headphones, and you're into sonic meditation, do it. Arguably, of course, don't neglect hardcore silent meditation. Silence is where it's at, folks. But that's a whole nother episode of Interesting Conversation. The hell was the point of today's episode? 20 minutes in, and oh yeah, I already gave you the prompt. Your 3 biggest questions. And you know what? It's open-ended. If you want to give the 3 biggest questions that you think you figured out, like you nailed it, you sorted it out, it's done. Here's the answer. Then boom, share it. Give me a list. 3 biggest questions in life are boom, boom, boom. And then give me your answers. I think the answer to the first one is, keep it brief, folks. Don't send me like a 40-page, crazy, maniacal, end of the world manifesto nothingness, okay? We'll do an episode on those later. But try to keep it nice and brief. 1 clear, succinct, 3 to 6 sentence paragraph. If you can knock it out in 3 sentences, your answer, great. And trust, if it's really complicated question and we all understand that the answer is really complicated, you can go on a bit more, but don't submit 11 pages, please and thank you. But please do submit. I'm welcoming here. It's a safe space. I'm not going to mock anybody except for anything that's really, really silly. I may poke a little loving, gentle, tough love fun if someone asks a silly question and or posts a silly answer to a question they think they figured out. And I've got proof, that it isn't that. I might. A little loving, hey, sorry, hate to break it to you, but maybe that's not the way that works. But I'm going to post it to you as a suggestion that you look into it. I'm not going to, bash anybody and declare that they're idiots or anything. I don't do that, right? That's what they want us to do. That's what the oppression wants us to do. They don't want us to have interesting, uplifting, collaborative, open-minded exchanges of ideas and points of view so that we can synthesize and synergize the common ground we might discover. They want us to argue and fight and tell each other that we're stupid and that we're wrong and that the other person's an idiot and that it's us versus them and us is righteous and them is unrighteous. So don't, if you send, I'll tell you that's the one place where people might get a little butthurt. If you submit a question, especially if it's a question that you are positing an answer to, that's clearly about perpetuating us versus them mentality dynamic, that's like rooted in that's going to spread that, I'm going to like call it out. And then we're going to like contain that question and that answer and analyze it. And it's not going to be about judging whoever submitted it. That's why it's anonymous, right? Like I'm going to anonymize the submissions. So please don't be weirdly scared or embarrassed to submit. Don't talk about names. Don't use names. I don't care about like personal details. I just want the answer to this prompt. What are the 3 biggest questions? And it can be either that you've confronted in the past and have found what you think are really good answers to, or that have just continued to befuddle you. The 3 most important questions. Either or. Which means if you got a set of both, then send me 6 questions. I humbly invite and welcome your submissions. Please, please, please. I know it can be annoying to be told to go to a thing. But some of you are listening on Sprecher. And if my concern, my worry about the statistics, which is why I brought it up, my worry is that the statistics on Sprecher might very well be limited to just the Sprecher platform. So then I don't know how many people are listening or downloading or streaming it through other platforms, but I've submitted the RSS feed to a bunch of different places. In fact, I've kind of lost track of my good list of all the places it got submitted to and accepted to. And most recently, it just got accepted at Spotify, which I'm really excited about. At any rate, if you're on one of those other platforms, please do feel free to comment on that native platform if it lets you comment. I'm not sure. But please, 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 if you really want your questions, your submission, and this is true of anything in any episode. If I throw out a question or a prompt, I've done it before a little less formally than I'm doing now, a little bit more like, this is a question episode. Like, I'm just going to talk about these questions and not answer them. Like, I'm not going to tell you what my biggest 3 questions are. Because I still got to think about whether or not I have a list of the 2 variants or not yet. The idea for the show came to me before I really answered it for myself. But yeah, if you're on those other platforms and it lets you, let's say you're listening to this on iTunes, and iTunes, I haven't looked, right? I haven't looked myself up and tried to listen to it and see if it lets me leave a comment as some sort of other platform through a friend's profile or something. I haven't tried that yet. But there's like iTunes, there's YouTube. I know YouTube you can leave comments, right? So if the YouTube community is still growing over there, thank you. I don't pay a lot of attention to the YouTube page. And I think I lost a lot of folks when I transferred from one YouTube channel to another. Which, by the way, if you've never been to my old school, original YouTube page, look that up. It's another Mr. Zeppo. And for right now, because I don't have them open in front of me, I don't remember what the difference is. But one of them, there's a new one and an old one, right? The old one is the original. It's like my original personal YouTube page. And that one might be just Mr. Zeppo, I think. And then the new one, I think, is the full name of my persona, the Incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. And yes, I am a personae. Look that word up, persona, Persona, with the funny Greek E. Is it Greek or is it, I forget what language it is, but it's definitely seen in translations, early translations of ancient Greek plays into Oldie English. So it's personae, and for the purposes of this mockumentary art, news, parody, opinion talk show, I do indeed play not a character, but a personae, which, for those of you who are really curious, is based on a character of fictional literature that I'm developing. That's a whole other thing. But stay tuned, because over the summer I will be spinning off some sub-segments into like a reading show, like a show of me doing like the audiobook version of what I'm working on. because I've been making progress, and I think this summer is going to be a big, good push. So yeah, I think I've hit all the bases. So please, 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 I know it's a hassle, but I really want to get at least a handful of submissions to make a good quality episode, maybe even a two-parter. And I know that the world out there has got a bunch of crazy, wild questions, right? And like I said, I'm not going to pretend to know all the answers, and I'm not going to judge anybody. But we should have a good laugh and maybe touch on some deep, interesting themes that are thought-provoking, and hopefully get some meaty questions that I can give some good answers to. And sometimes when people ask me stuff, and this is why I got into podcasting, actually, because I noticed that sometimes I get a little bit activated on social media. If people are positing questions, I get a little activated, and somehow my brain synthesizes something I read 20, 30 years ago. Because I was a bookworm. I was a book junkie. I lost count. I stopped counting at 3,400 and some odd books that I'd read. And I hadn't even gotten to high school yet. I'm like, I read too many books. And everyone told me, like, you're addicted, man. So I don't claim to have mastered or memorized. I'm not one of those people, I'm not claiming to be like Tesla, who literally, there's a special term that's beyond, even more intense than photographic memory. Right? Photographic memory, you can remember a still, very clear, very high-def image of everything. I wouldn't self-identify as that. But my brain does this weird, I do have some weird, crazy thing going on in my brain that might be a little unusual or out of the ordinary that's akin to having photographic memory. My brain is constantly trying to synthesize everything that I've consumed. So from documentaries to bizarre, pseudo-spiritual TV shows, I'm trying to synthesize and analyze and pair out that which is convergent with reality as I have phenomenologically experienced it in my personal direct experiencing of reality, including weird, crazy, kooky, hippie, new age, experimental stuff. I was deeply inspired by Terence McKenna when I finally discovered that I too might be labeled a psychonaut, and that might, given if the person calling me that, labeling me that, does have a good understanding of what that word is intended to mean. According to people like Terence McKenna, it wouldn't be a put down or a dismissive, insult. But I digress. So I don't know. Who knows? Maybe I'm clinically insane. That's part of the catch-22 fun of reality, right? Because the world's a crazy place. The universe is a crazy maker, and here we are all together on this disc or this flat plane or this globular blob rock or this molten lava, thick crusted but not solid because everyone thinks it's solid, moving, breathing, sentient womb of a planetoid being, which is what I like to call that which we dismissively call planet places. They're not planet places, they're planet people. Everything is a whatever that is person. That's a sunflower? Well, guess what? That was a sunflower person. And it doesn't have a mouth yet, doesn't have eyeballs yet, and it can't speak to us directly in those ways, but it is a plant with some, perhaps rudimentary, perhaps mystical and bizarre to us because we are assuming that it's stuck and attached to and derived from, maybe even caused by the brain, which arguably there's some evidence that it may not. I posit here, for those curious, that it is actually a convergent phenomena, that the brain matter is indeed significant and necessary for the whole process, but it alone is not the root source of consciousness, that there is something else that is bridging some intra-dimensional divides through multiple layers, 3 sets of 3 to the best of my ability to understand is the starting place, our basic bridge from body avatar to that which we might call our higher self, our soul, our shim, to use I think the correct Hebrew, ancient Hebrew, shim. I may be pronouncing that incorrectly. I gave away, random fun fact, I randomly was given the inspired idea, and I don't say that pretentiously. I just seriously had like a weird sort of deja vu moment, thought like, I'm supposed to give that book to this acquaintance that I'm going to go have coffee with. Like, I'm really, you ever have that moment? Like, I really should bring that for them. Like, they need to read this. And that's why book lovers lend books or give books away to others. Usually, some weird, strange, out of the ordinary impulse that we get accustomed to in regards to our minds making connections about books that we love and people that we are interested in or care about, right? That we are getting to know and think we might understand a little bit about. So, anyways, but that thing I was just referencing, Shem, Lars Mull, for those who are curious where I just pulled that from, Lars Mull, author of the O Manuscript and The Law of Light, if I'm not mistaken, if memory serves. Those are his two most well-known books. He's got a few other titles out. I don't know them off the top of my head. Honest, genuine, humble recommendation. As many thumbs ups as... which god is that has all the arms while they're dancing? Krishna? Shiva? Whichever one they are. All of the thumbs up. And in an early chapter of The Law of Light, he goes into and explains that the reason we, as human beings, currently don't understand the real meaning of the golden rule is that it isn't to treat others as you would prefer to be treated yourself. It's treat others as though they were your own Shem. He goes real good, hard into that, like deep, into a really like, wow, that's mind-opening, mind-changing, cathartic, catharsis kind of healing of realizing that was a very profound and well-accepted understanding of that teaching, of that biblical material before it got written down and rearranged and covered in schmuckety spoo and corruption goo and hijacking magoo from those who hijacked what we would call the organized, quote-unquote, Christian organized religions. Wow. So that's spun out of control in terms of stuff that I was rambling about, and it's been going on for almost half an hour. I humbly invite you to go ahead and poke a little fun at me, too. But for those of you who are down with the kind of jam that we're jamming here, think of this as an invitation to collaborate with me asynchronously. If you've just are checking out my show for the very first time because you've seen me on one of the platforms that I'm trying to free-vertise, you know how you can sort of free social media advertise without being too obnoxious on certain platforms. Well, I've been doing a little bit of that, not too much, but whatever. But if you're just here on Sprecher, etc., please, wherever you're listening to the show, come to Sprecher.com. If you can leave a comment on like TuneIn or any of the other podcast platforms that are taking my RSS feed and redistributing it at you through your preferred thing, please feel free to leave your comment there as well, simultaneously. You only have to write it once, and then all I gotta do is select all, copy, click, paste, and click over to the next platform. It's super easy. And you don't even really have to log in to Sprecher.com to leave a comment, I think. You can leave it as an anonymous guest, and that's great. Because my show isn't about people and their names. It's about big ideas, big questions, and how do we, as a collective, you and I, my friends, whether we know each other or not, are part of the human collective, right? There's big, daunting questions beyond the pragmatic issues of politics, but bring those too, right? If you see some natural divisions and some new buckets of 3 questions, bring it. Just bring me some questions you want to hear discussed. And if you got answers, great. And if you don't have answers for them, that's fine too. As always, thank you for tuning in. May peace, love, and grooviness transmit from me to you and to everybody else in this world, because I'm either clinically crazy or everybody else who has gathered evidence before our lifetime of generational people that points to the interesting fact that the human being might be like a transducing antenna, an antenna capable of both transmitting and receiving simultaneously, then hey, why aren't we using that tool, right? If we can learn or rediscover or remember, right? Why? That's one of, okay, dang, I said I wasn't going to give away any of my 3 big questions, but that is one of my 3 big questions. But maybe I'll have to bump it down, think of a couple of new, more urgent ones, and bump that one down out of the top 3. But why aren't we? If it's a possibility that this thesis that I'm synthesizing from other various thesum, whatever the correct conjugation of thesis into the plural to represent all the different things I've read in my lifetime, there seems to be a convergence of theories, to use a slightly different word, but means just about the same thing, close enough to make sense. There seems to be a convergence, and we can synthesize and posit that. Some new language might be required once we get through that process. That's what we're working on, right? Trying to understand the world is another way of putting it. But if I'm not crazy and there really is a convergence that indicates that very likely every human individual is actually a living transducer. And someone once kicked down a few other engineering terms that I was like, that's a bit beyond my engineering knowledge, but I get your drift. You're saying, oh yeah, it's got a few, even more modalities of operating than just a transducer, right? But just to get, that idea out there, man, like why aren't we pursuing that? Cultivating that for the purposes of the greatest good for the whole collective. All right. Ponder that for a hot second, but then shoot me your questions. And that is what I've got to say about that. As always, thank you kindly for listening. This has been the Almost Daily ZenCast with your humble host, the Incorrigible Mr Zeppo. Until next time, may peace, love, and grooviness blossom in your heart.